Okay, that red light has to be on.
Oh, yeah, right.
It
Maybe,
took me a couple of times, but,
maybe you should just leave it.
oh, no, no, no.
Okay,
That's,
in case they whisper.
This thing, this thing.
are you ready?
Good morning, everybody. Good morning. The Committee on Education and Labor will come to order. We certainly want to welcome everybody here today. I note that a quorum is present, and the committee is receiving testimony today on innovations in expanding registered apprenticeship programs. The Subcommittee on Higher Education and Workforce Investment is holding what is actually our first real official hearing this term to examine opportunities to expand access to high-quality registered apprenticeship programs. Registered apprenticeships are a valuable tool in our effort to help more Americans get the skills they need to compete in the modern economy. And for apprentices, these programs provide access to good-paying jobs and benefits that provide employees increased wages as they build their skills. A valuable credential that can help secure future employment and, of course, advance along a rewarding career path. Over 90% of apprentices are employed after completing their apprenticeships. That's quite a number, actually, and earn an average starting wage above $60,000 annually. Over the course of a career, individuals with apprenticeship credentials can earn around $300,000 more than non-apprentices. Registered apprenticeship programs are similarly beneficial for employers that can build a pipeline of more productive and talented workers who are more likely to remain at their jobs for an extended period of time. Builds loyalty, and we've heard that repeatedly. Studies have shown that for every dollar that employers invest in apprenticeships, they receive $1.47 in improved productivity, reduced waste, and greater innovation. But not all training programs are shown to be this beneficial. The key ingredient that has made the registered apprenticeship so successful is the consistent quality found across all apprenticeship programs. Quality standards in registered apprenticeship programs not only ensure that apprentices build valuable skills while earning a salary and benefits, but they also ensure apprentices receive a credential that is valued in the labor market and recognized by employers across the country. These programs require employers to develop a plan combining classroom and on-the-job training, and this includes a schedule for when and how the program will help workers increase wages as they build skills and competencies. In June of 2017, the White House issued an executive order creating the President's Task Force on Apprenticeship Expansion. And the task force recommended a second track for apprenticeships called Industry Recognized Apprenticeship Programs, or what we call IRAPs. IRAPs would allow private entities to both create and set their own standards for apprenticeship programs without the quality assurance and approval of the Department of Labor. In other words, IRAPs would not be required to maintain the same quality standards as registered apprenticeships, but would still have access to the same taxpayer dollars dedicated for high-quality registered apprenticeships. And the rationale behind this proposed change is that the current apprenticeship system is too burdensome and inflexible. And today, we have witnesses who run the registered apprenticeship programs in sectors including information technology, insurance, and construction, and I hope that we'll be able to talk about the differences to a certain degree and how we can certainly see clear so that it's a process that people can understand easily and that it is not a cumbersome one. The committee welcomes their perspectives on whether the registered apprenticeship model meets the needs of their industries and ways to improve the system while maintaining quality and how to support expansion of high-quality programs. To ensure that the proposed IRAP program does not waste taxpayer dollars, we need to examine then if it will provide employers with a consistent level of quality standards that they already expect from registered apprenticeship programs, and if it is necessary to divert resources to maintain two apprenticeship programs as opposed to improving and modernizing one national apprenticeship system. According to a study done by the Harvard Business Review, there are currently 47 occupations, 26 of which commonly require a four-year degree, that would benefit from creating new apprenticeships, but have required skills that can be attained without one. And this includes professions such as computer support specialists. And just as we must expand apprenticeships into new sectors, we must expand into non-traditional demographics. Women, for example, make up nearly half the U.S. workforce, yet account for less than 10% of apprentices. I know through my conversations that there is strong bipartisan support for apprenticeships. Last Congress, I joined with Mr. Guthrie in introducing the Apprentice Act, which would have expanded apprenticeship programs and awareness, as well as creating a better alignment between the Departments of Education and Labor. There are a number of other good proposals that we'll consider, such as expanding pre-apprenticeships and growing the number of intermediaries who can assist small and medium-sized businesses. I want to thank our witnesses for traveling long distances to be with us here today, and we certainly look forward to all of your testimony. I now yield to the ranking member, Mr. Smucker, for the purpose of an opening statement.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Look forward to working with you on this subcommittee, and thank you for yielding. All over the country, we've We're beginning to see the perception around skills-based education evolve. For far too long, there's been a stigma surrounding skills-based education. There was a misconception that a baccalaureate degree was the only viable path to a good job and a successful life. But as the national skills gap of more than 7 million unfilled jobs has widened, people have begun to wake up to the power of skills-based education like on-the-job learning, earn-while-you-learn programs, and apprenticeships. These programs are real ways to give Americans the skills needed, not only to build successful careers, but also to empower them to improve their own lives. We've seen a surge of interest in apprenticeships in recent years, but this workforce development tool's really been around for centuries. Apprenticeship programs give countless Americans the knowledge and skills they need to excel in the millions of good-paying, in-demand jobs that are available nationwide right now. Nothing can prepare a student quite like on-the-job experiences. Apprenticeships are a tried and true method of setting students up for success. We know they work. We also know that we're behind other countries regarding how broadly apprenticeship programs can be applied. Take Switzerland, for example. They have robust apprenticeship programs in over 230 industries. This committee should evaluate, learn best practices, and think about how we can expand our current apprenticeship offerings. And when appropriate, we need to make sure that government doesn't stand in the way of progress. Last Congress, this committee made historic progress strengthening our workforce development efforts. In July, we sent the Strengthening Career and Technical Education for the 21st Century Act to the President's desk, and he signed it into law. This was the first legislation in more than a decade to modernize our nation's CTE program. It promotes strong engagement with employers and connects students with on-job learning opportunities like apprenticeships, which we know are invaluable tools for success in the workplace and beyond. The committee also passed the PROSPER Act, the first ever post-secondary reform legislation to make apprenticeships and industry-led earn-while-you-learn programs a central component of higher education learning. Committee members also oversaw the implementation of the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, or WIOA as we call it, which gives employers a seat at the table and encourages collaboration between local leaders to create on-the-job learning opportunities. The Department of Labor's registered apprenticeship program served 500,000 active apprenticeships last year. In order for a business to participate in the registered program, they must describe what activities apprentices will complete, how much time will be spent on each activity, how the apprentice will be supervised, set a schedule for wage increases, and an affirmative action plan, among other conditions. I've been a strong supporter of the administration's actions to expand apprenticeship programs for all workers, and I've been closely following the development of the IRAP system. However, I am concerned that not all industries will be eligible to participate under the administration's proposal. We must not lose sight of the goal to reach all workers. Private industry-led apprenticeship and earn and learn programs account for more than 80% of all apprenticeship programs around the country. Employers know what skills their employees need to succeed in the workplace, and we've seen real innovation and results from highly customizable programs for apprentices. We need to encourage business and community leaders to continue to build up their workforce and help their employees succeed. This committee must continue working to make skills-based education a valuable path for all Americans. This is a real way that we can make an impact, have an impact on our workforce, our economy, and on the country. I'm really looking forward to hearing from today's witnesses. Thank you for being here. I'm looking forward to hearing about all the ways that we can connect effective education with jobs that are available today and promote apprenticeships to build our workforce and better our country. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Specker. I appreciate your statement, and without objections, all of the members who wish to insert written statements into the record may do so by submitting them to the committee clerk electronically in Microsoft Word format by 5 p.m. on April 10th. I'm now pleased to recognize my colleague, Representative Jayapal, to briefly introduce her constituent who is appearing before us as a witness today.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair, and welcome to all of you. It is my great honor and privilege to introduce a constituent of mine who is here. Jennifer Carlson serves as the Executive Director of the Washington Technology Industry Association Apprenti program, the workforce development arm of the association. Apprenti is focused on addressing the tech industry's workforce and diversity needs through a registered technology apprenticeship program. It is the nationally registered USDOLIT sector lead, focused on filling the tech industry's workforce and diversity needs through registered apprenticeships. And I can't tell you how pleased I am that we get to lift up the incredibly innovative work that you are doing right out of Seattle that can serve as a model across the country. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I'll now introduce the remaining witnesses. Mr. James Pavasek. Mr. Pavasek is the Director of Education and Training for the United Association of Pipe Trades. He also serves as the Chairman of the International Training Fund, the President and Chairman of the International Pipe Trades Joint Training Committee, and the Co-Chair of the UA Labor Management Cooperation Fund. Thank you for joining us. Mr. Marquez is the Vice Chancellor of Workforce and Economic Development for the Dallas County Community College District. He leads the district's efforts in the development and growth of apprenticeships in a variety of industry sectors in the North Texas area. Thank you for being with us. And Bridget Grainer of Aon is the Vice President of Global Public Affairs for Aon, which is using the registered apprenticeship model to create a new talent pipeline for building the company's workforce. Ms. Grainer also played an instrumental role in the creation of the Chicago Apprenticeship Network. Thank you so much as well for being here. We appreciate all the witnesses and look forward to your testimony. I wanted to just remind you all that we have read your written statements and they will appear in full in the hearing record. Pursuant to Committee Rule 7D and committee practice, each of you was asked to limit your oral presentation to a 5-minute summary of your written statement. And I wanted to remind you as well that pursuant to Title 18 of the U.S. Code, Section 1001, it is illegal to knowingly and willfully falsify any statement, representation, writing, document, or material fact presented to Congress, or otherwise conceal or cover up material fact. Before you begin your testimony, please remember to press the button on the microphone in front of you so it will turn on and the members can hear you. Very important to our communication. As you begin to speak, the light in front of you will turn green, and after 4 minutes, the light will turn yellow to signal that you have 1 remaining minute. When the light turns red, your 5 minutes have expired, and we hope that you will wrap up as quickly as possible. We will let the entire panel make their presentations before we move to member questions, and when answering a question, please remember to again turn your microphone on. I think that covers everything. So I first wanted to recognize Ms. Carlson. Please begin, and then we'll go down the line. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Davis and Ranking Member Smucker, and thank you, Representative Jayapal, for the introduction. Just to give some context to the challenges in the IT sector, there is a shortage of trained talent for technology roles, both within the tech sector and other sectors that rely heavily on technology to remain cutting edge. At the close of 2018, there were roughly 2.97 million tech job postings in the U.S. However, the country produces only 65,000 four-year computer science degrees and 250,000 total related engineering degrees annually. New graduates cannot fill these positions, and coupled with an aging workforce and forecasted tech growth, this gap suggests a meaningful disconnect between supply and demand. As technologies evolve and automate, the skill level needed to meet our requirements increases. Hiring middle skills tech talent has become the greatest pain point for companies of all sectors. More and more are recognizing that college degrees may not be the best or only path to these middle skills jobs. Apprenticeship represents a time-tested approach for supplying companies with the talent they need and workers with fulfilling careers and family-sustaining wage. 3 years ago, the WTIA conducted a study on diversity and talent gaps in Washington State's tech sector. Based on the outcomes of that study, the WTIA decided to focus its efforts on a registered apprenticeship pathway that could address today's hiring needs in real time. A consortium of companies with hiring needs across the country, including Microsoft, Amazon, F5 Networks, Primera Blue Cross, Russell Investments, and Accenture, evaluated several program design options and determined that registered apprenticeship is the best secondary talent development track to invest in. This is due to the success of this model for the tech sector in other countries, the rigor and consistency of the registered model in the United States, the certified completion of apprenticeship credential provided by the U.S. DOL via established criteria by the industry, and portability of the classroom training related to tech certifications. The industry strategy being that registered apprenticeship creates the ability to accept applicants with either a college degree or completion of registered apprenticeship. Finally, per DOL regulations, the requirement that apprenticeship is a job. This critical requirement means that investment is made only in those with a guaranteed employer sponsor, willing to train that person for a minimum 1-year term, and employers are thus training to retain this new talent into planned headcount. These companies identified the most critical middle skills jobs, defined as jobs with potential for upward mobility, and traditionally would have required a college degree, as the highest impact area for apprenticeship. Since then, Apprenti has outlined and filed 13 middle skills tech roles that it can fill with diverse populations based on competency over pedigree. After receiving the American Apprenticeship Initiative grant from the U.S. DOL, Apprenti launched its first cohort of apprentices in November of 2016. It has since pushed to market over 40 additional cohorts for over 400 apprentices across 11 states with 30 employers. And in 2019, we'll see an additional 20 employers and 3 new states, totaling roughly 1,000 apprentices. Apprenti's role as the sector's intermediary has grown to meet industry's needs through screening and delivery of diverse talent, identification of technical training resources on behalf of employers, program compliance, apprentice registration, and as the standards holder. This hybrid time and competency-based registered model straddles the high-tech, financial services, healthcare, and retail sectors for tech jobs, and is successfully delivering diversity with women and minorities comprising 66% of our placements and veterans 64% of our placements. We are seeing incredible outcomes. The program is delivering value for apprentices and ROI for state and federal governments. To date, apprentices have moved from a median annual pre-program earnings of $29,000 with 22% unemployed on entry to the program to a median apprenticeship earnings of $51,000 plus benefits and median retained earnings on completion and final placement with the company of $75,000. This reflects a 155% jump in earnings from pre to post-apprenticeship in roughly 18 months. This improved lifetime earnings also delivers more than $1 million per apprentice in improved earnings. Early retention figures have been strong, with 84% completing apprenticeship being retained. Our apprentices come from every walk of life: teachers, Uber drivers, warehouse workers, pharmacy technicians, and return-to-work moms. Our youngest placed is 18, our eldest placed is 63, and the median age is 32. There are a number of things the federal government can do to further stimulate adoption. In conclusion, companies invest an average of $80,000 per apprentice in salary, benefits, and partial tuition subsidy for these unproven candidates. The technical training cost per apprentice is roughly $15,000 per person. Congress can create federal match funds and state employers can tap into to augment the classroom training expense. Focusing additional federal investment in scaling successful programs like Apprenti can move tech from thousands to tens of thousands of apprentices via appropriation of $1 million per market. And there is significant brand confusion around the sector about the definition of what an apprenticeship is. Codifying into law the current regulation defining a registered apprenticeship would reduce brand confusion, create clear guidelines around its use, and establish accountability for using it in training subsidies. Thank you, and I will do my best to address any questions you have.
Thank you very much. Please continue, Mr. Pavicic.
Good morning, Chairwoman Davis, Ranking Member Schmucker, and the members of the subcommittee. My name is James Pavicic. In addition to being a proud product of an apprenticeship program, I am the Director of Education and Training for the United Association of Union Plumbers and Pipe Fitters, or UA for short. On behalf of the more than 350,000 members of the UA, I want to thank you for the opportunity to testify today. There are currently over 45,000 apprentices participating in registered apprenticeship programs supported by the UA and our International Training Fund. These programs provide training covering the full range of UA crafts, including HVAC technicians, plumbers, pipe fitters, welders, and sprinkler fitters. In my view, there are at least 5 attributes to a successful apprenticeship program. First, there need to be successful partnerships. A successful apprenticeship program is built on a partnership between organized labor, signatory employers, government, and more recently, accrediting agencies such as the Council on Occupation, or COE. The UA and our signatory employers spend over $200 million each year on apprenticeship and journey person training. Bear in mind that these are all private sector dollars, so these investments come at no cost to taxpayers. All told, training programs sponsored by the UA and our sister building trades unions provide the lion's share of the training for the U.S. construction industry. UA apprenticeship programs have always been a part of a registered apprenticeship system, and we believe very strongly in it. UA programs also benefit from the accreditation process conducted by the COE. The COE has accredited an increasing number of UA programs, which allows us to provide instructions for which apprentices receive college credits. The second attribute of a successful program is effective recruitment. UA programs are committed to offering the benefits of apprenticeship to all qualified applicants, including people of color and women. The UA has also worked with the U.S. military to train and place veterans in our programs through our award-winning Veterans in Piping, or VIP program. Under the VIP program, the UA offers transitioning servicemen and women the opportunity to participate in an intensive 18-week program on base where they receive cutting-edge training in one of our crafts at zero cost to the government, the military, or the student. VIP graduates are then placed in a local apprenticeship program with advanced credit and guaranteed a job. The VIP program currently operates on 7 different military installations and has provided apprenticeship opportunities to nearly 2,000 military veterans to date. One of our many appeals of the UA apprenticeship is the opportunity for apprentices to earn a strong wage and benefit package while they learn. To give you an example, pipe fitter apprentices in my home Local 597 in Chicago, currently receive an average wage of $32.79 per hour, along with a high-quality health coverage, contributions to a 401k, and other benefits. Apprentices who complete the program today will earn an hourly wage of $48.50 and begin receiving contributions to a defined benefit pension plan on top of their 401k. In addition to receiving a job, on-the-job instruction, apprentices attend classes at one of the hundreds of state-of-the-art local UA training schools across the country and have the chance to earn college credits in the process. Upon graduation, they enter a growing industry with a lifetime of skills and are in high demand, and unlike the average college student, they come out of our program debt-free because the education they receive comes at virtually no cost to them. Innovation is a third attribute of successful apprenticeship program. UA apprenticeships partner with subject matter experts, industry suppliers, and manufacturers to design and implement training programs that are on the cutting edge of new technologies. A fourth attribute of a successful program is a team of dedicated and talented instructors, which our organization is fortunate to have in abundance. Fifth and finally, no apprenticeship program is successful without a commitment to excellence. Everyone involved in the program must be invested in the work of setting high standards for the apprentice and then helping that apprentice achieve them. Anyone can call something an apprenticeship, but as I hope I have been able to convey, building a successful program requires a great deal more than that. In the UA's view, the best way for Congress to make a life-changing apprenticeship opportunities available to Americans is to support the programs that invest the time and resources and commit the high standards necessary to produce those apprentice opportunities. I invite every member of this committee to see what this looks like by visiting one of our training centers. It would be our privilege to have you. Thank you again for this opportunity.
Thank you. Mr. Hayes.
Madam Chair, Ranking Member, and members of the subcommittee. My name is Mark Hayes, and I serve as the Vice Chancellor for Workforce and Economic Development for the Dallas County Community College District in Dallas, Texas. DCCCD consists of 7 independently accredited colleges with credit and non-credit enrollment exceeding 100,000 students. It's the largest community college district in the state of Texas and one of the largest in the nation. It's indeed an honor to be before you today to discuss how DCCCD is engaging employers, students, community-based organizations, and others to expand apprenticeships in North Texas. In my role as Vice Chancellor of Workforce and Economic Development, I oversee a dedicated team of professionals who work to expand apprenticeships in a variety of industry sectors. We've made a commitment to our Board of Trustees for DCCD to be engaged with 50,000 apprentices by 2030. To date, we're involved in 25 apprenticeship programs touching more than 1,600 apprentices. Nearly 50 more companies have expressed interest in both registered and industry-recognized programs, and our team is working with these companies to get apprenticeships off the ground and getting more North Texans into middle-class jobs. These apprenticeships encompass construction, manufacturing, information technology, healthcare, logistics, and aerospace. We work with both private employers and organized labor to create middle-class jobs that provide a good living for workers and a stable workforce for businesses in North Texas. DCCD's involvement in these apprenticeship programs varies. The district may simply be a pass-through entity for funds for some apprenticeship programs, but is also more involved as an intermediary, assisting employers with the establishment of new apprenticeships and working with state and federal officials in assuring compliance with the law. Our team works closely with employers, the U.S. Department of Labor's Office of Apprenticeship, and the Texas Workforce Commission to provide meaningful competency-based apprenticeships that are important in meeting workforce demands in the Dallas area. A significant milestone occurred this past summer when DCCD, in partnership with RMS Aerospace, the Office of Apprenticeship in Dallas, and the Texas Workforce Commission, worked together to create the nation's first registered apprenticeship in unmanned aerial systems. The first cohort is underway and educating future UAS pilots for cutting-edge jobs with a variety of North Texas employers. Apprentices will receive 3 FAA licenses and 1 FCC certification when they complete the program. I often get the question, why is a community college district so involved with apprenticeships? Well, my answer is our job is to help workers earn more and companies to become more profitable. Dallas is experiencing a conundrum. While there are thousands of middle-class jobs going unfilled, the poverty rate is the 3rd highest in the nation. Most of these jobs require an associate's degree or less, yet people who need these jobs are not getting connected to them. Our DCCD Chancellor, Dr. Joe May, speaks about the higher education network, where it's not about a single higher education institution, but about creating a better, more efficient system where communities and individuals thrive. Many of the apprentices we work with are not enrolled in our colleges as students. This effort is not about enrolling more students in our colleges. We hope that at some point they do enroll, but that's not the primary motivation here. We want members of our community to obtain the skills necessary to support their families, and we want companies to have a stable workforce. If those apprenticeships involve college credit, great. If not, well, then that's okay too. The key is obtaining the necessary skills to provide a good living and creating a dynamic, skilled workforce that helps our communities grow and thrive. The vast majority of apprenticeships DCCD is involved with are registered. We do have a small number that are industry-recognized apprenticeship programs, and we fully anticipate those types of apprenticeships expanding significantly once the Department of Labor issues clear guidance on IRAPs. DCCD's goal is to meet employer needs, whether that be a registered apprenticeship or an IRAP. Some employers are hesitant to begin the process of a registered apprenticeship because they feel it's not flexible enough to meet their needs. They want a program that allows an apprentice to be trained in multiple skill areas. At DCCD, we are all about meeting the employer needs and look forward to dramatically expanding IRAP programs in the future. Our team is prepared to work with both registered and IRAP apprenticeships, working with employers and federal and state officials to make it happen. In closing, I would like to emphasize how critical the role of the community college system is in moving apprenticeships to the next level. While registered apprenticeships have been around for decades, it's only recently that the community colleges have begun to play a significant role. Community colleges must continue to add and expand apprenticeships so individuals and communities can thrive. We cannot allow ourselves to be boxed in by excluding any type of program that allows individuals to obtain the necessary skills to succeed and businesses to grow. Thank you for this opportunity today. I sincerely appreciate your attention and your dedication to this effort.
Thank you very much. Ms. Gaynor.
Thank you very much. So good morning, Chairwoman Davis, Fox, and all the members of the committee. Thank you for this opportunity to testify today about AON's apprenticeship program and where it can take us in the future. I'm Bridget Gaynor, Vice President of Global Public Affairs for AON based in Chicago. AON is the leading global professional services firm providing a broad range of risk, retirement, and health solutions. Now is an important time in workforce policy, and we are encouraged that policymakers, academics, and employers are recognizing the expanded role that apprenticeship can play, continuing to develop the 21st century workforce. Every year, AON surveys employers around the country about the risks that they face in running their business. At the top of the list, along with trade, cyber threats, and others, is workforce and the ability to find the right talent to grow your business. The U.S. economy has been changing for a generation, with the services sector and technology, industries where skills evolve rapidly and there are few structured training programs, taking a larger part of both GDP and employment. But our workforce policy has failed to keep pace. Universities, employers, and individuals are often sitting in silos without an effective mechanism to scale successes across the country. These mechanisms do exist, however. Apprenticeships have long been successful in the skilled trades and give a roadmap to effective recruitment, training, and employment. At Aon, we have the benefit of a generation's worth of proof that this return on investment works. Apprenticeships across the economy, trade, services, retail, hospitality, are common in Europe, especially in the UK. There's a long tradition of students leaving high school and joining the insurance industry, especially in London. In London, as in Chicago, the motivation was to address a specific constraint in the workforce, and in this case, it was retention and engagement, especially in entry-level positions. As we all know, the assumption that you will begin and end your career at the same company is long gone, but the turnover rates among certain entry-level positions was of such a pace and percentage that it called out for a solution. And we found it within the ranks of our own employees. When we looked at the roles that had higher attrition in the UK, we found that those employees who had entered as apprentices were much more likely to stay at Aon longer and had higher engagement scores. Which is essentially a measurement of how you feel connected to and happy with your job and your employer. Engagement scores have a direct correlation to productivity, as evidenced by the recent Gallup poll. Over the last 5 years, Gallup interviewed 2 million workers at 300,000 organizations and found that engagement was directly correlated to productivity and profits. So we know from the track record in the UK that apprenticeships have both higher retention and engagement. So from my office window at Aon in Chicago, I can look down Lake Street and see Harold Washington College, one of Chicago's city colleges. And I'm pleased that Mr. Hayes mentioned the role of city colleges because I think it's incredibly important. Until 2 years ago, Aon had never hired anyone from city colleges. All our hires only came post 4 years of college. But it was a missed opportunity for us. We were ignoring an entire talent pipeline that was staring us in the face, but we had no real way to bring them into the company. So we brought together employers, worked on a curriculum, created mentorship programs, but realized we could do so much more, which became the base for the Aon Apprenticeship Program. So I want to be really clear about this next point. Our apprenticeship program is not a social program. It must work for the business. So we set out to build a business case to replace some of our entry-level positions with apprentices. The first step was to determine which ones really required 4 years of college, or where had we just gotten in the habit of hiring from 4 years of college. We looked closely at those jobs and found that many of them had really high turnover, which is expensive and disruptive. Because the role didn't require the degree, the new hire was not staying in a job that didn't really demand it. But our HR system required it because that's the way we had always done it. Over the last 3 years at Aon, we've hired 75 apprentices in a 2-year program in IT, HR, and our core insurance business. They work 4 days a week at Aon, go to classes at Harold Washington, which is a city college in Chicago, on Fridays. They are paid as full-time employees and receive the same health and retirement as I do, as well as fully paid tuition. Of the 3 classes of apprentices we have hired, 75% of them are African American or Latino, most are Chicago Public School graduates, and all of them were working multiple jobs to finance their life and school before coming to Aon. Further, our apprentice program is registered in partnership with the Department of Labor, which signifies that our program meets the standards and quality requirements for such programs. Because of these efforts, these young people have a path to a career, not just a job. But that was just the beginning, because I mentioned the idea is good, but the scale is essential. We created the Chicago Apprentice Network to give employers an opportunity to come together, learn about the program, and eventually join. In our first year, 2017, us in Zurich had 50 apprentices. In 2018, there were 8 employers with 130 apprentices, and this year we have 23 employers with 425 apprentices across the city of Chicago, the goal being 1,000 by the end of 2020. This is a tremendous opportunity for our city, but this is where we need your attention and leadership. In order to build this new tranche of our workforce, we need to have a structured program that has national standards. Registration is a big part of that because our investment is high quality and we want it returned to us. To that end, I'd like to commend Congressman Lipinski, Congressman Rodney Davis, and Rochester Krishnamurthy, who just introduced the LEAP Act to further support apprenticeships. I also have comments on city colleges, which were said by Mr. Hayes, but they are incredibly important to the ongoing work of the apprentice program. So thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. Thank you to all of you. Your testimony was very helpful, and we're going to move into our question session now under the 5-minute rule. Everyone can ask a question, and we'll kind of keep an eye on the clock for them as well. We'll be alternating between the parties. I now recognize myself for 5 minutes, and my question to you it really goes along with the testimony of all of you. I mean, we acknowledge that apprenticeships have seemed to pique the interest of employers, of policymakers, educators, new apprentices, and more. And so we're kind of, for the United States, we're certainly at a 20-year high for the average number of people taking part in apprenticeships. And Congress has continuously increased our appropriations for registered apprenticeship programs with dedicated funding starting in 2016. Ms. Carlson, according to your testimony, of course, Apprenti was created just 3 years ago. Yes. And has a great record in that 3 years, and Ms. Gaynor as well. Really, you first apprentices started in 17. So it's happening at a time that we actually have low employment. And you know, people might ask, so what's going on now? Why now? Why is there interest and appetite across the country to create and invest in and expand these apprenticeship programs? You've clearly outlined a lot of that in your statements. I wanted you to just offer, if you could, what you think of the reasons that you've heard and even borrowing from one another. What stands out the most? Why now? And we're going to move on and then talk about the role of the Department of Labor as well. Ms. Carlson, if you'd like to start.
Certainly. I think if you're looking from the tech sector, it's a combination of factors. There's this significant talent gap that we outlined already, but you're also dealing with a highly underemployed population in the folks that we're looking at. If you look at the median income coming in at $28,000, it turns out in a very blind way, we don't ask for educational attainment coming into our program, but we only know that based on apprentices, that 52% of them have a college degree. And if a median age is 32, that means they came out at the bottom of the economy, and based on that income have been largely in service level and entry level positions and incapable of moving on. So this creates an alternative pathway for them to get re-educated into a much higher living wage and serve the tech sector as well, without having to go back to college and start over.
Mm-hmm. Great, Mr. Pavis.
Well, I don't believe that the interest in apprenticeships are really correlate with unemployment, because apprenticeship is not about filling jobs today or tomorrow, but it's really about getting a career and having that career and having those lifetime skills and being a productive member of society and being able to raise a family and send your children to college. These are highly skilled jobs. It's a viable a chance for them to, you know, let's say even avoid college debt. You know, let's face it, college debt's a huge problem in this country, and for an individual to be able to attend an apprenticeship at little to no cost to them and come out with a job that pays just as well as a college education is a wonderful thing. The other part of it too is that as some of these apprenticeships show, they can earn college degrees. It's a different path to college degree post-secondary education. So.
Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and just as quickly as you can. I know it's hard. What else would you like to emphasize that you've heard, Mr.
Yes,
Hayes?
Madam Chair. I think it comes down a lot to labor economics. Employers are looking for employees. They're not only looking for them, but how do they retain these employees? And you know, we all know that there are more job openings than there are workers to fill them now. So in some sense, it's a desperation among some employers to try to find workers to fill those needs. So I've always said, if you keep doing the same thing you've always done, you're going to keep getting what you've always got. So employers are starting to look at apprenticeships in a whole new light now as a way to fill labor force needs.
Thank you. Ms. Gaynor.
Just quickly, the pendulum has shifted. A generation ago, a lot of people didn't go to college and they had perfectly good career jobs. It swung way over to college, and I think what we're seeing now is the weaknesses in that system. So you have high cost of college, you have this high turnover rate. You know, candidly, millennials need a lot more engagement to stay happy at work, and this was an issue. So I think engagement, retention, and the pressures of high cost of college.
Great, thank you so much. I wanted to ask you all about what role you think the Department of Labor should be playing in relation to apprenticeship programs. Maybe just from you, Ms. Gaynor, sort of high, medium,
Yes.
low, what do you think?
I think that look, as an employer perspective, the role of the federal government is to set standards. We do not take $1 of federal money, nor have we ever sought it, and neither do any of the employers that are in our network. Having said that, it's not I don't want to be in the position of creating a set of standards for other people to follow, but I do want to know that if we've invested 2 years in training someone to be an IT analyst, that they should be able to go to another company and be an IT analyst, just like you can be a plumber or you can be something else. It should be portable in the marketplace, because to invest in the workforce is ultimately better for the entire country. That's not the job of the employer to set national standards. However, they need to be high quality and set across the country.
Thank you, thank you. And perhaps someone else will pick up and we'll get into this role as well. I wanted to now recognize the ranking member, but instead we have the ranking chairwoman of the Education and Workforce Committee, and so I'm delighted to turn to Ms. Fox.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. And I want to thank our witnesses for being here. The chairwoman has had a great interest in this for a long, long time, as have I, and I'm very glad that we're having this hearing today. Mr. Hayes, I'm encouraged to hear you say preparing individuals for the workforce should not be about one type of education, degree, or institution. I've tried to champion the idea that all education is career education. Can you tell me more about how that type of flexibility benefits your community and the people that come through your programs?
Well, absolutely. It's Congresswoman. It's a matter of we don't want to put people in a box. We know that people learn different ways. People pick up skills different ways. We want that flexibility to be there so that these individuals can obtain the skills they need in order to provide for themselves and their families. And so if that's registered apprenticeships, great. If it's IRAPs, great. If it's traditional college degree, outstanding. We want to be able to have that flexibility in our community to give people the choices that they can make to better support themselves and their families.
Great, thank you. Mr. Hayes, every day I hear from employers they need skilled workers. We've talked about that, most of you have. Registered apprenticeship programs are a great way for workers to earn while they earn a skilled trade. However, many employers, as you have also, I think most of you have said, that the process can seem overly burdensome to employers and may ultimately not give the company the flexibility it needs. What are some of the concerns you've heard from employers when it comes to registered apprenticeship programs?
I think there are two main concerns from our employer community. One is the length of time it takes to get a registered apprenticeship program off the ground. And the second one, to some extent, is a lack of flexibility of trying to learn multiple skills. And that sometimes they feel like they're put in a box. On the skills that they have for the apprentices to learn. They would like to have more flexibility to expand the skills of that apprentice.
You mentioned in your comments something that you don't usually hear from somebody associated with a community college, and that is whether the students receive college credit or not is not the big issue that you all are concerned with, and I applaud you for saying that. But how many of your programs, if any, have college credit built into them? And do you expect that to be more of a focus in the future? Because I assume you're funded on FTE by the state and that you'd be funded under continuing education differently than you are for curriculum.
Yes, ma'am. There are a couple of programs where the apprentices get college credit. What we look at is as a community college system, is how can we be more innovative in this area? It could be a situation of prior learning credit, where an apprentice gets through a program, and then we come back on the back end and say that we can award the apprentice college credit for this. Instead of working through the state system to trying to get new programs established, that can take anywhere from 1.5 years to 2 years. Employers don't want to wait that long. Apprentices don't want to wait that long. How can we as a community college system possibly come back on the back end and award that credit once the apprentice is well established or through with the program?
Well, that's a very innovative way to think about it, because obviously the college has that opportunity to do it, particularly if you are the ones who are designing the programs, then you know what's in those programs, and they could be very similar to what you have in curriculum. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am, very much so. And a lot of this too, we listen to the employers, what is it you need? What kind of skills do you need these apprentices to have? And making sure that rigor is sustained, and that as a community college system, how can we help grease the skids and move this process along? And then if the apprentice or the employer chooses later on for that apprentice to have college credit, then how can we make that as painless as possible and get it done quickly?
And one more question, you don't have to answer it all now, we get it from you later, but are you keeping records on the number of students who might continue at Dallas Community College or other Texas colleges to earn degrees? Because one of our big concerns these days is completion of programs, and so I hope you're keeping some records on this so you'll know how many go on.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, correct.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Ms. Jayapal?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you again for your very interesting testimony. This is a topic of great interest to me. When I was in the state Senate, we worked with labor unions, community colleges, and nonprofit organizations to put together a very successful pre-apprenticeship program with millions of dollars. It was a bipartisan program that I led, and we have incredible retention and graduation rates in just 2 years. Ironworkers actually did a fantastic job of really reaching out to formerly incarcerated and minorities. So I appreciate very much the work that you've done. Ms. Carlson, your testimony describes stark gender disparities in registered apprenticeships in Washington State. Through December of 2018, there were about 19,220 registered apprenticeships in the state, of which only 10% were women, and about 7% of apprentices were women at the federal level. How does this contribute to broader gender wage gaps in the industry?
Well, I think that the hiring and cost disparity and how we compensate people in the tech sector is well documented, unfortunately. The significant advantage on the registered apprenticeship side is that doesn't exist. What we establish as a wage per occupation with each company, and it is company-driven at that level, is what all apprentices in that role get paid. And so there is no wage disparity walking in the door. And we have established a system for communicating with the companies also on retention, where we identified a couple of companies, one in particular, that retained their male apprentices at a slightly higher wage, not at the significant gap we've seen historically, than the female. And we brought that to their attention, and they leveled that.
Thank you. And today we will pass the Paycheck Fairness Bill on the House floor under Democratic control. So you also mentioned that Apprenti aims for 70% of its participants to be women, people of color, and or veterans. I'm interested in how you target these groups in particular. I would add rural communities to this as well, because I think there is a particular challenge with getting jobs into rural communities. And if any of the others of you would like to respond briefly to that as well, I'd be interested. You want to start, Ms. Carlson?
Certainly. So, so far, our success in attracting diversity has been strong. We have 84% of our applicants in women, underrepresented minorities, and veterans. And the way we've defined that very specifically are African American, Hispanic, mixed race, Native American, Pacific Islander, basically to the exclusion on an EEO level of Asian and Indian, because that isn't underrepresented in the tech sector specifically. The composition, 64% underrepresented in women, 66% veteran. Composite is 84%. So we are well above the 70% that we intended to place and continue to manage to that level.
And if anyone else wants to add to this, I'm interested in what strategies you use to do that. What makes you effective at getting that kind of diversity?
I think it was about the outreach and how we structured the program from the get-go. It was about how we targeted organizations that work with those underrepresented groups, from working on base for recruitment to community college system to NPOs, nonprofit organizations serving those groups.
Anyone else want to add to that? Ms. Gaynor?
I think it's intentional recruitment, and I think it's also creating a support system. So we partnered with an organization called 1 Million Degrees that meets with the students when they go to school on Fridays. They meet with a manager. The 1 Million Degrees meets with a manager. They meet with a student. I mean, look, we always tell these guys, your boss is not your mom. You have to kind of figure out a way to navigate your workplace. So realizing that this is someone's first entry into work and supporting them has been helpful.
It's really what we found too, that those nonprofit organizations can do that particularly well, so those partnerships are important. Finally, I'm deeply concerned about the Trump administration's effort to replace registered apprenticeship programs with so-called industry-recognized apprenticeship programs, which do lack government oversight and protections for potential conflicts of interest and the welfare of apprentices. Mr. Hayes mentioned that in his experience, employers are hesitant to begin the process of a registered apprenticeship because they feel it's not flexible enough to meet their needs, and they want a program that allows an apprentice to be trained in multiple skill areas. And I'm just curious, Ms. Carlson, has that been your experience at Apprenti, and what would you say in response to that?
It has not been our experience thus far, and we're working now in 11 states, and the consensus of the companies we work with has been that they want a single standardized system, an ecosystem, if you will, of registered apprenticeship to define the roles, because the roles are not dissimilar from one sector to the next with regard to technology, and that portability of the skill set is what's most important or paramount to our ability to scale this operation, and that will actually provide the outcomes that companies are looking for to fill the skill gap. Secondarily, they've had extraordinary flexibility in creating the tech talent, the training, the classroom portion of training to meet that employer's specific needs, and we actually work with the Dallas Community College system to deliver that on behalf of AWS, Amazon Web Services, and have scaled it exactly to their needs very differently than we scale Microsoft's training needs, but to the same platform of skill sets required.
Thank you so much. And Madam Chair, if I might ask for unanimous consent to introduce into the record a progress report for the Pre-Apprenticeship Support Services Program that I mentioned at the Washington State Department of Transportation.
Thank you. So ordered.
Thank you.
Mr. Watkins.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Ranking Member Fox. Mr. Hayes, this question will be for you. A majority of my constituents are enjoying record low unemployment. The Bureau of Labor Statistics says that in February, the unemployment rate in Kansas, it's the lowest it's been in 10 years. That's 3.4%. We believe that this is in part because of common sense pro-growth policies like low taxes and low regulation. With such a demand for skilled laborers, it seems like we should be focusing more on all types of apprenticeship and workforce development programs, not just the Department of Labor registered programs. What are your comments on that, and what kind of workforce development policies do you think we should consider here in Congress?
Well, as I've mentioned, Congressman, I think it's important that we have a variety of programs from the standpoint of the community college district for that we can work with employers on. If those are registered apprenticeships, that's great. If they're IRAPs, outstanding for us as well. If it's credit programs, certificate programs, we're there to move agilely to meet employer needs. We want to be able to help those employers. In Dallas, about 60% of our funding as a community college district comes from ad valorem taxes, and 60% of those taxes are paid by businesses. We are in the business of helping our businesses to succeed, and we help our businesses succeed. That means they will hire our students or they will hire our apprentices and make those programs work. As far as policies go, the thing that we ask for is basically we want to maintain rigor in all of our programs, whether they be apprenticeship programs, academic programs, whatever the case may be. We feel that employers are giving us great feedback, and they say, why would we want to train people for jobs that we have in our business and those people not be trained to the utmost of the skills that they can get? So we hear both sides of this, and we work the registered programs, the IRAP programs. We also work the traditional college programs as well to meet employer needs.
Thank you, Mr. Hayes. Madam Chair, I yield my time.
Thank you, Mr. Watkins. Next is Mr. Harder.
Thank you so much for being here. This is such an important issue, and I'm really excited to have the chance to have this conversation. Ms. Carlson, in your testimony, you state that our nation is facing a tech talent crisis. And you said in 2018 there's about close to 3 million tech jobs left unfilled in the U.S. Did I get that right?
Correct.
A lot of those jobs are in San Francisco and Silicon Valley, only 90 miles away from my district, and a lot of folks in my community commute 3-4 hours both ways, round trip every single day to have that, and we have a lot of talent. We just need to make sure that we're creating a better pipeline and a better educational system into some of those jobs. Given this enormous demand of some of these opportunities, do you know the percentage of combined 4-year computer science and engineering degrees that we're graduating every year?
I do. 65,000 computer science degrees and 250,000 related STEM engineering degrees to computer science.
Got it. So let's take the big number there, 250,000,
Right.
compared to 3 million
Right.
job openings. So I think we can all agree that we're not going to solve the tech talent crisis just by graduating more people from four-year degree.
And there's no capacity.
Exactly. And I think that's especially resonant in a community like mine, where 84% of my residents don't have a 4-year college degree. And I think if we tell people that the only route to the middle class, the only route to solve some of these jobs that our employers need to fill is through a 4-year college degree, we're really doing a deep disservice to a lot of folks. So that's the demand side. Let's talk about the supply side. So on the supply side, the federal government today spends about $1 billion, $1.2 billion on vocational programs. Do you know the ratio of how much we spend for vocational programs versus higher education?
I do not.
So we did the math. We tried to add it all up. There's a lot of different programs there. But what I think we spend about $80 billion on at the federal level for higher education, Pell Grant, subsidized levels, all the rest. And that we still have a crisis on how we actually can make college more affordable, so we probably need to be doing a better job there. But even at our current level, we say that this is an important priority, and we're spending 80 times more on higher education than we are on vocational training. We need to do a much better job of increasing funding for both higher education and for our apprenticeship programs. What do you think we can be doing? Like, if we actually did a real good job of emphasizing the funding around a vocational training program and made it commensurate to the amount of talking and lip service that we give it, what could we be doing better to make sure we're connecting that gap?
Well, I think there are two things, at least with regards to our sector, when I speak of tech. One is we don't have the rich 80-year history yet that our brothers in the trades have. And we don't have the same level of company engagement with regards to paying for the classroom portion of training for unproven quantities at this point. We have a lot of appetite and interest and swirl in the corporate side to understand what this could mean in creating new talent. We have worked very closely with the state of California, amongst others, to create public-private partnerships to underwrite some of that training cost, but creating a sustained national funding mechanism that companies can tap into while we grow into this idea of taking people from non-traditional sectors would be significant. And just to run a couple of quick numbers, if we put $100 million into a national training fund on a match basis for companies or states to tap into, that would fund on a partial basis, 50%, roughly 13,000 apprentices, with that $50,000 earnings delta in the tech sector going from $29,000 to $79,000 in earnings from pre-apprenticeship to post-apprenticeship. That would net $650 million in improved income just in the first year, or $13 billion lifetime. That would be a meaningful ROI on that $100 million a year investment that the government could make.
Yeah, I really see there's being two challenges here. One is this huge imbalance between supply and demand that we talked about, and the lack of real federal focus to solve this problem. But the second is what you highlighted, which is the fact that we now have our entire apprenticeship program in America governed by an act that Congress passed in 1937. And I don't think there was a lot of tech jobs that were really in 1937, maybe some weird stuff. So that's what we need to be doing, and I'm really excited to have the opportunity to talk about this, and we'll look forward to working with you and hopefully getting some stuff across the finish line. I yield back by time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Walker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would have to take just a moment to applaud the Simmons family from machine specialists back in my district there who have really created the best apprentice program that I have seen, and would at some point maybe like to enter some of their work into the record. Mr. Hayes, when it comes to the federal government being involved in some of these apprenticeships, how do you feel like, if you were grading us, giving the federal government a grade, trying to partner with a small business, where are we right now? Can you speak to that?
Well, I can speak to the experience we've had with the Office of Apprenticeship in Dallas, in the DOL regional office there. They've been fantastic to work with. They are understaffed. They have great knowledge of apprenticeship programs. We consider them a critical partner, along with employers and organized labor in all of our apprenticeship programs. Grading the system as a whole, it's tough to say because it can vary in different parts of the country.
Okay. Let me move forward, and you give me a good synopsis there. Can you describe this typical student that participates in one of your apprentice programs? Can you build me a little profile here?
Yeah, and again, it's hard to build a profile, but most of the apprentices, basically in their early 20s. But however, in our unmanned aerial system programs, we have individuals anywhere from early 20s. We have one individual that's in his early 60s that's in that program. So we see that this is, we're kind of plowing new ground in North Texas in this area, so it's something we're going to see, I think, a lot more interest in.
And would you say the impact of these apprenticeship programs, how would you describe that? I don't want to lead you too far, but give me just a quick word on that.
Well, I think the impact right now is growing, and as we said, we want 50,000 apprentices by 2030 in Dallas. And we think that will be a substantial economic impact, and that will continue to grow every year.
I appreciate that. What would you say some of the concerns of the small businesses are regarding compliance with the requirements of these registered apprenticeships?
I think there's some trepidation in the fact that they just don't know. There has to be some education involved there, not only from us, but from the Department of Labor. Other businesses who are participating in apprenticeship programs now are great resources. Businesses talking to businesses helps a lot and helps alleviate a lot of those fears.
Sure. I think you mentioned about small businesses in your testimony seeking additional flexibility. Can you expand for just a second on that lack of flexibility?
It's a common perception among the businesses that if I train an individual in a registered program with one set of skills, then I'm locked into that one set of skills. A lot of that is education on our part, how we can help individuals look at the apprenticeship programs that are best for them. They want employees that have a multiple toolbox full of skills that they can use, and some look at the registered programs and say that works. Others look at the IRAPs and say that's what we would like to have.
And how would IRAP or other industry-based programs address that issue?
I think the perception is it gives the employers more flexibility to help individuals with multiple skill sets, gives them the freedom that they can do some things that maybe they couldn't do under registered programs, and so they look at those with a very keen eye because they think those programs could work for them.
I was meeting recently with an organization called Pike Energy, and meeting with the CEO, and I was impressed to talk about what they're trying to do, and that within 5 years, pretty much anybody can be trained and be making 6 figures a year. The problem is with Pike Energy and dozens and dozens, if not 100 companies I've talked to in North Carolina, they can't seem to find someone to be able to even start these programs. So maybe this is a question to you, anybody else who wants to weigh in my final minute here. At what age range, and maybe if you have any experience to speak this, at what age range should we be identifying some of these skill sets as far as trying to match them up to some of the industry that we see out there?
Well, personally, I think pre-apprenticeship programs are great in this area because it gets students exposed at an early age to those areas, and I think that the earlier the better. Letting people know about occupations, pre-apprenticeship programs are great, whether they be in the high school level, and getting people prepared for a full-blown apprenticeship program, whether it be registered or an IRAP program.
I'd like to follow up some more, but I've got about 17 seconds left, so with that, I'll yield back, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Levin.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Thank you so much for convening this hearing. This is a very important topic. I'm a huge champion of apprenticeships. And I want to just pick up where the gentleman just left off with pre-apprenticeship programs. When I was running the workforce system in Michigan, we worked with the registered apprenticeship programs such as Mr. Pavesic represents here, and created pre-apprenticeship programs from high school on, from college, dislocated workers, whoever could enter them, and we got people ready to meet the rigorous standards of the registered apprenticeship programs. Road construction apprenticeship readiness was the first one we did, and we had paid programs where people got training, got tools, and a lot of them was people from disadvantaged communities, and it's something that's very good. I think that registered apprenticeships can and should expand into new industries, occupations, and populations as one of many solutions to address the need for more high-quality pathways to the middle class and beyond. Registered apprenticeships have consistently proven to be worthwhile investments, with 91% of apprentices employed after completing their apprenticeships, earning an average starting wage above $60,000 annually. I'm troubled by the Trump administration's efforts to expand unregistered apprenticeship programs, which are not accountable for meeting quality standards or ensuring the success of apprentices. I strongly support innovation and expansion of registered apprenticeships into new occupations, but I will not compromise on the quality and accountability of these programs. I extend my hand to Republican colleagues who want to work with us on expanding high-quality registered apprenticeships that would benefit both employers and employees. Ms. Gaynor, I have concerns with the confusion that having two apprenticeship systems under the same name with very different levels of quality and accountability will add for employers and prospective participants. Do you share those concerns?
I think the key thing is employers really want to focus on running their business, and they want to hire people, and they want them to be trained, and they want a credential like a 4-year degree to mean something. So if you went to a college in North Carolina, it's the same as if you went to a college in Indiana, and you can do that. I think one set of standards means that we're much more likely to make the improvements in the workforce policy that we're talking about. What's going to happen is no one's going to lead a protest to your door to tell you it doesn't work. They're just not going to do it because it's too complicated, and no one wants to spend a bunch of time navigating whether or not this thing makes any sense. We already know that the registration process creates a system in which someone is trained to do a job, and they can do the job. I doubt large employers are going to spend a lot of time trying to learn a whole new system. You just may get people not participating.
So you want certainty and clarity about the standards, essentially, from the employer.
We're making a substantial investment, and we'd like it to mean something.
Absolutely. And I appreciate your earlier comments about portability being so important for you. And it's really a contribution the employers make. They build their own work team, and they build it across their whole industry. Mr. Pavesic, people talk about these programs being restricted to union workplaces. Some say registered apprenticeships are only for traditional trades and that unions receive preferential treatment from the U.S. Department of Labor for their programs. From your experience, do these claims seem to be accurate?
Well, I heard said, and Ranking Member Schmucker mentioned the amount of apprenticeships in Europe and how far ahead Europe is in the United States. And I would say that, a registered apprenticeship, and we've talked here today about registered apprenticeships and the amount of effort that goes into a registered apprenticeship. The thing is that if something's easy, is it really worthwhile? We shouldn't water down apprenticeships just so that we can increase the numbers of apprentices in this country. Registered apprenticeships have stood the test of times. The building trades are definitely, a source of that to be able to see that. But I just don't see where, if we water down apprenticeships and create those numbers, we talk about filling jobs, we want to make sure that individuals are trained so that when unemployment goes up, that they have the skills to be able to find a job and not just be able to have that one job, and then when that job's gone, then they no longer have the skills to find another.
Thank you. Madam Chairwoman, as my time expires, I want to tell you I was at the Bricklayers Local 2 Training Center in my district in Warren, Michigan, late last week, and they have 30 and 40 people coming into wave after wave of apprenticeship training programs, a rainbow of people, all ages, from all races and nationalities. and they can't train enough people. It's a fantastic job, you know, starting $60,000 and above. So this is a really important area for our workers, and I really appreciate your interest in it.
Thank you. I'm going to turn to Mr. Muser.
Excuse me. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you very much to all of you for being here with us today. This is a very important discussion, one of which is quite topical in my district in Pennsylvania, and I'm sure most districts throughout the country. I appreciate your expertise, and I have spent much time visiting career and technical schools throughout my district, including career and tech centers in Lebanon County, Carbon County, and Schuylkill County. Just yesterday, I met with directors from Berks Career and Technology Center, sharing ideas on how we can improve this climate of skill and career development for people of all ages. We also have in my district some high schools, including Central Columbia High School, that has an outstanding career development program. So it is quite topical to have this sort of initiative for the workforces that are available, and so as we fulfill the many jobs that are also available and going unfulfilled. So, Mr. Hayes, I know you understand the importance of making sure we are educating students in a way that aligns with the unique needs of employers in our communities. So I ask you, as you're doing an excellent job with your community college, creating opportunities for industries within your area, can you talk about how other school districts can replicate some of your best practices?
Well, I think that a lot of it was we just decided to jump in and learn, and mistakes were made along the way. We will make more mistakes, I'm sure. But as we gather this expertise, it's all about listening, and listening to the workers, listening to the employers. That's key, and what are their needs? And so you know, our basically what we do, we serve as an intermediary in a lot of ways. If an employer says, I need people trained in these skills, or I need people trained in those skills, then we try to solve the problem. How do we help the employer meet those skill shortages? How do we connect Dallas County residents with those opportunities? How do we get into the high schools to let students know that those opportunities are available? You know, we have a lot of our students, our average age in our colleges is about 26. A lot of those are individuals, they may have a child or two, and when you go in with the traditional higher ed speak and saying, well, in 2 years you could be doing this, or 4 years you could be doing this, I said, no, what can I do in 2 weeks or 2 months? I've got kids to feed. How can I move ahead? So a lot of times apprenticeships are a great avenue for them if they don't have the time, the luxury of time to spread out a 2 or 4 year program for a college degree. Get into apprenticeship, start making some money right now, and then if they want to look at college hours down the road, great. We'll help them with that too.
Okay. Are you finding employers difficult to gain to be part of this, and for them to embrace that this is a great way of fulfilling their job?
It's a lot easier than it used to be. And as I mentioned earlier, I think a lot of that is due just to the fact of labor force shortages. The workers just aren't there that they need. So they're looking at new ways, innovative ways that they can come in and try to attract workers and retain those workers. And so it's a conversations that we're having where employers are much more open to hearing about apprenticeships and other innovative methods to put people to work to get to meet their labor force needs.
Okay, but do you find that a challenge training young people or anyone for new career, developing new skills is certainly one part of it, the fulfillment, but making sure that those who have the demand are aware of what endeavors that you are and what you are offering. Is that more of a challenge than the
It is a challenge simply because of the scale of Dallas and the Dallas-Fort Worth area, of how large it is. We try to reach out to as many employers as we can, but we're still hitting just a drop in the bucket. with the number of employers that we do have. But we want to get that word out as quickly as we can to as many employers as we can to let them know that there are options available to them.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, Madam Chairman, Madam Chair, I yield. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Trahan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to thank you for holding this important hearing and for the witnesses for taking the time to join us this morning. In Massachusetts, our Republican governor has launched a new initiative to expand registered apprenticeships. And much of what we heard today, I'm proud to report we're already doing in the Bay State. The governor's apprenticeship expansion plan was launched last summer to fill pipelines of mature industries, but also to grow into new economic sectors as well. And in just over a year, we've added over 100 new apprentices in manufacturing. We have new programs in healthcare, and our first apprenticeship program for software developers will be launching in April. Ms. Carlson, thank you for testifying today. You've had great success. Apprenti is clearly filling an important role in meeting the demands of today's tech job market. And 3 words from your testimony jumped out at me: competency over pedigree. I agree with you. We need to embrace more pathways for our young people to get a good job at a good wage, particularly as college prices continue to rise. However, in a tightening job market, a bachelor's degree or higher seems to be a prerequisite, even if the job doesn't necessarily require it. Dr. Naomi Custodia-Laura, who's an assistant dean at Northern Essex Community College, and our president there, Dr. Lane Glenn, recently wrote a paper titled Revaluing the Associate's Degree to Remedy the Skills Gap. The upshot was, although many employers can require a bachelor's degree or higher for a particular middle skills job, it doesn't mean that they should or need to do so. The associate's degree can be sufficient. Your testimony was in a similar vein, but for registered apprenticeships. I have no quarrel at all with those who value a bachelor's degree. I mean, I was the first in my family to graduate, and it was life-changing for me. This committee recently reported that a bachelor's degree holder will earn 167% more than what a high school graduate would earn. But a bachelor's degree isn't always the best option, and we need to, as you say, value competency over pedigree. What has been the reception from Washington's Technology Industry Association's membership or other companies as Apprenti has expanded into, I think, more than 11 states now, when you've argued for apprenticeships filling roles that had been traditionally reserved for those with a bachelor's degree?
Well, I think the pain point for employers is finally at a fever pitch. There are a combination of factors. The mantra has become poaching in order to get the talent that they need, which is driving company P&Ls up significantly on their tech talent. And so this is an opportunity for them to sort of change their direction and be willing to become training entities to develop the talent that they need and create the long-term sustainable platform for training talent that the country needs on a portable basis. The companies that are working with us have gone very publicly on record as needing to work on more of a culture change in the tech sector around training. And so the first 40 to 50 companies that are at the table, very large and very small companies both, are working on that front to do exactly that.
Do you have lessons for us, certainly making the case for registered apprentices to employers, but as you so eloquently said, culture change. How do we accelerate that culture change?
Well, again, I think it's about the pain point. Companies have recognized it and they understand it. They're looking for the right solution. And I think that my colleague here at the other end of the table very eloquently put it herself, that this is about investing in a system that we expect to be sustainable and portable, and that we wouldn't do this at a company level if we didn't see that support from the government level to create such a program. Now it's a birds of a feather flock together mentality. So, each company is looking to see who else has gone before them and how successful that has been. And we're finally getting to a point of momentum where we're able to show that it's working across sectors, across states, and that the skill sets are stable, and that the talent, even though unproven, is able to migrate into the job and be retained. So it's really we're in that 5 to 10 year longitudinal study window that companies need to see to feel positive about it.
You bet. And I'm going to try to squeeze this last question into my 20 seconds. But often what we hear from employers is that with no formal bachelor's degree, soft skills are lost that are so important. You know, those management skills, financial literacy skills. Have you confronted that in 5 seconds? Do you have any recommendations for how to fill that gap?
I don't have a recommendation. I can tell you that it is a core requirement of the companies coming in, though.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Guthrie.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for holding this meeting. Thanks for all the witnesses for being here. And I tell people back home quite often that a lot of this stuff that happens here happens in working together in bipartisanship. That's not what gets on television all the time. And the chair and I have worked hard on the Apprentice Act and just helped put forth the Partners Act. And everybody here, because everybody hears it at home, that we're having employers that want to expand, want to grow, want to move forward, and they can't find quality and qualified employees to apply or to be there. And if employees show up with the right skills, they're going to make their lives better. So it not only makes our businesses better, it makes our citizens better. And so that's why there's so much focus on this. And what a great panel, because I worked in a manufacturing facility, and we didn't have enough tool and die makers, industrial maintenance people, and tried to find them, till we found the very best people were the ones working in our plant at other places. They knew what the die was, they knew they knew how to run it, they didn't know how to set it, they didn't know how to make it, they didn't know how to repair it, but they showed up for work every day, and they were working hard. And they weren't underemployed according to their skill level, but they were certainly underemployed to their aptitude level and what they could be and what they could do. And there was a particular person who was like mid-30s and had 2 children, one almost a teenager. And I remember in a quality lab her doing an angle on a thing, and I said, well, you just did trig, and she had dropped out of high school. And she says, I don't know trig, I never took trig. I said, well, you don't know that, but you do know it. And it was funny to see her kind of spark and going back to school. But I guess too, that 4 years is a lifetime to her. If you're 33 years old, you got almost a teenager, just to say, I can't go in the fall and just in the spring and take the summers off. I got to get through this. And so that's I want to focus on and try to reach out to her. Think a lot about her and people in her situation and how we move forward. But there are a lot of jobs that require skills, and with those skills come good wages, but some don't take 4 years, like truck driving. I know in our area you can start over 40,000, almost 50,000 starting for truck driving. There's welders paying $18 for people to just show up and learn $18 an hour just to learn how to weld, if they're willing to learn how to weld. And what seems to be happening, of course, our big supply of these skills were people that came to work unskilled, and we trained them because they were smart and they just didn't know it, or nobody told them that, or something happened to them in their education level. But now you struggle just to get if you have some unskilled, in a factory you got unskilled jobs or low skilled jobs, and you got high skilled, and trying to transfer them up. Now just getting people, if you go to employers now, they say, if I could find somebody breathe and tries to pass the drug test and move forward, I can move forward. And so I guess what I'm getting at, and I know that Mr. Hayes, you have an ambitious program with your apprenticeships, and when you go to factories and when you go to even workforce training, we did a lot of work bipartisan on WIOA. The biggest concern when you go to employers, even people who train workforce training, is we don't have people showing up for the training. We're not getting people into the training. And wages are, it's almost $50,000 to start truck driving. I think Walmart said they may pay $90,000 for truck driving because they can't move their stuff. So, but it just doesn't seem the market's working, that wages are going up in skills. Don't necessarily talking about unskilled or low skilled, and business, and there's 7 million open jobs, but people aren't showing up for the training. There people are, but the mass of people that can fill these jobs. And Mr. Hayes, do you have any insight on that? And I know you want to reach, I think, 50,000 people, and how are you going to measure that and how you're moving forward with it?
And I'll give you a good example, Congressman. In Dallas right now, there's probably 45 to 50,000 jobs open today that pay $24 an hour or more and require an associate degree or less. And yet, as I said, we have the 3rd highest poverty rate in the nation. They're not buying what we're selling.
That's my point. You're right to my point. So what's your insight?
Yeah. So how do we bring that home? And I think a lot of it we're doing, and our chancellor very visionary with his early college high school programs. We have 55 high schools in Dallas County right now, or that will next fall will be participating, where students are getting an associate degree and their high school diploma at the same time. And we've partnered with the University of North Texas, Dallas, so those students can move in to bachelor degree programs, for example, at no cost to that student. We have the Dallas County Promise, students who are graduating seniors from Dallas County high schools coming in. and not having to pay anything to go to college.
Are you capturing, I'm running out of time, are you capturing students that would have probably gone on anyway, they just got it done before they got out of high school? Or are you actually bringing in people that you think would have been lost to the system?
Yeah, the data shows that we are increasing significantly the number of students who are going to college. And my thing is that college is an option for them, but apprenticeships are too. And so how do we create programs in the high school levels to start bringing those students into apprenticeships?
I'm not to say college, I meant skills, so you're absolutely right.
Skill programs as well. And I think the pre-apprenticeship programs that we discussed are great avenues for that. And it's something we have to up our game in to try to bring in more pre-apprenticeship programs to the high schools to match what we're doing, bringing students into college programs.
Thank you for that, I appreciate it, and I yield back.
Thank you very much. Ms. Lee?
Good morning. Thank you all for your testimony today. Mr. Pavicic, first of all, I had the honor of touring Local 525's training facility in Las Vegas, Nevada, and I must say it was a true gem and a true asset for our community. I also, in addition to serving on this committee, I also serve on the Veterans Affairs Committee. And so I was very pleased with your testimony about the UA's Veterans in Piping program, the VIP program, where you support transitioning service members and give them advanced credit towards their completion of their apprenticeship program. I wanted to ask you, what was the UA's motivation in creating that program?
Basically, it was the right thing to do. These men and women put their life on the line to, protect us and to keep our nation safe. And it really wasn't even a sale. It was a very easy program that we put together. The membership 100% supported it, and it's supported 100% with membership contributions into our training fund.
Thank you. Suicide prevention is such an important part of what we're focusing on the Veterans Committee, and I hear again and again from veterans that it's a whole body, and it's about having work and having employment and living in dignity. So thank you for that. I wanted to ask you, talking about the success of it, can you talk about your success metrics and how successfully you transition veterans into the workplace?
So, it didn't come without problems. I mean, when we started it, we were new to it, and it was actually a new program even to the military. But what we found is that as we work more closely with the military, and what we actually do now is the military sends us the candidates, so they understand the candidates, what they're looking for, if they'll be successful. Not every soldier wants to be a pipe fitter or a plumber. So we wanted to make sure that if we were going to make that investment, that individual was willing to do that trade and to get into that trade. So, and the idea then too was then to support them. We make sure that we find a job for them when they come out. And the best part about this is that they're actually trained while they're still on active duty. So the day they transition out, they go right into a job.
That's great. Thank you very much. Ms. Carlson, the administration recently released its 2020 budget and proposed the $160 million expansion of IRAPs rather than direct funds towards registered apprenticeship programs. The Department of Labor also may soon announce the first grant recipients for these new IRAPs. I believe that with the introduction of these apprenticeship programs, it's super important that we ensure that there's a strong quality control that ensures that individuals who are enrolled can also achieve the outcomes that they so desire. We've seen what weak oversight does and the pitfalls of that, or quality control, especially when it comes to for-profit schools. Certainly in my community in Las Vegas, we've seen a lot of closures and a lot of students put out without any degree as a result. Will your organization attempt to create these new IRAPs rather than stay with the registered programs?
No, my board has made the decision with me to stay in the registered system and not engage in IRAPs.
Can you expand on what were the factors that caused you to make that decision?
Well, at this point, it's two, really. It's that we have no directive from the employers that we work with to do it differently. And the companies want a standardized, holistic, portable system and feel that the rigor attached to the registered system is the correct one. The IRAP system being defined as something that would be company-centric takes away from that portability on the skill sets. Second to that is that we don't have a definition of what an IRAP is. I can't engage in what I don't understand. And as we've tried to do our research on that and have sat through several committee meetings, it is still unclear what it's expected to deliver and how it will be defined.
Thank you. Mr. Pavsik, I have one more question for you. Can you tell us what sets the UA's registered apprenticeship programs apart from other workforce training models like the non-registered programs in your same sector?
Well, I mean, highly skilled jobs, the amount of money that the individuals make when they come out, and it's actually, we're setting them up for, to be great attributes to the country, because it's not just a job that we're training for, it's a career.
Great, thank you all very much, appreciate it.
Thank you. Mr. Grothman.
Right, thank you very much. I do have apprenticeship programs in my district as everybody else, you know, toward the carpenters, the operating engineers, pipe trades, that sort of thing. All very impressive and all share something in common. They can't find enough people. And employers around my district can't find enough people. I'll ask you guys, maybe we should start with Mr. Hayes, but any of you, is there anywhere in the country where we really have enough people in these sort of things, or is it a nationwide thing that these well-paid professions are frequently more well-paid than what you get with a four-year college degree, can't find people to fill them? Is there anywhere around the country where they really have enough people in these trades? You think of anywhere? So it's a nationwide problem. Okay. I attribute part of this to the snobbishness connected with a four-year degree, coming out advisors, high school guidance counselors, that sort of thing. This is a problem that's been going on for 20 or 25 years. I don't know why they're not up to snuff. Can you suggest what we can do to get the word out to people at age 16 or 17 about how much more money they can make and how much less in debt they will be, not to mention have, I think, more job security to the young people than we are now?
Can I answer that?
Sure.
I believe that where the real answer is to the guidance counselors that are in high schools. And
they need some regulation there. There's
well, and the biggest part of that, Congressman, is that their evaluations are based on how many children they send to college, whether they spend one day in college or they go the entire time, and that's how their evaluations are based. They should be based on, have they sent somebody to a post-secondary education system, whether it be apprenticeship or college. And we try to talk to guidance counselors. We attend the guidance counselors conferences. We talk about it. When they see our model, they think it's a great model, especially the fact that they can receive college credits while they earn and learn. But it just seems like that message just doesn't get down to the student or the parents.
Okay. Anybody else have any? Well, I'll ask something to combine with your answer to the last question. Well, we'll go ahead. We'll ask the others of you respond to that last question.
If I may. I think it is correct that we have to look at what the guidance counselors are doing and how they're establishing it. I think that from a national advertising campaign, we need to destigmatize what an apprenticeship is, because it's immediately.
Well, I think it's destigmatized. I think among most people. I think the problem is a lot of guidance counselors, who, by the way, are very well paid, get very generous fringe benefits, are almost making things worse. Do you think that's true?
I don't know what their compensation is. I do know that they are incented to put people into college degrees, and that our sector as technology is equally as much in demand, looking for roles and occupation or people to fill the jobs as the trades are, and that wages in both industries can end up looking the same within 5 years.
Okay.
Without the benefit of a degree.
I'll ask you folks, do you see a lot? One of the things that I think is very illuminating is when I hear from people in the trades or people in tech schools talking about people who got a degree that didn't lead to a skill, coming back when they're 28, 29, 33, 34, getting a skill that they could have had when they were 20 years old, and they've been, losing out on compensation for 13 or 14 years, not to mention frequently harnessed with a big debt as well. Do you folks find that true around the country, where people are getting involved in these programs much later than they could have?
Oh, absolutely. I think that, we see it all the time. Students coming back to, for whatever reason, can't find work in the area that they originally studied, or bored with that, tired of it, and want to try something new. It's pretty significant in our system.
Anybody else want to comment on that?
What I would say is we see more and more applicants that come into our program that have four-year degrees just for the exact same reason. They cannot find a worthwhile job, and they need to pay off their debt. And all of them, after they get in the apprenticeship program, say the same thing, that they wish they would have done that earlier. And that could help somewhat too, to fund more vocational classes in high school, so that these individuals can see that there are other jobs. There are IT jobs and plumbers and pipe fitters and welders that are available to them.
I'm not sure it's the federal government's role, but I do see in my area the more on-the-ball school districts are beginning to do things, getting people acquainted with these skills in high school. Is this, I know they're doing it more in Wisconsin, maybe it's because we're a heavy manufacturing state, got a lot of good construction outfits, but is this something that you see more nationwide, more of the high schools being on the ball and realizing that we can get people on the road to these apprenticeships even when you are in high school?
I think we can start younger, certainly.
Mr. Grothman, your time is up, but I must tell you that I would love to work with you on this counselor piece.
Oh, good.
Thank you. Ms.
Thank you much.
Bonamici.
Thank you, Chair Davis and Ranking Member Smucker, and thank you to all of our witnesses for being here. This is an important discussion we're having, and I think the real key is making sure that we have a path for everyone. As a member of this subcommittee and this committee, I'm certainly not going to argue that a college degree is not valuable. The key is making sure that for those who do decide not to go to college or seek a different path, that we have those opportunities for them. Career and technical education, of course, in our schools is another way to enlighten students about different opportunities in the workforce. So I represent Northwest Oregon, and as I travel around and talk with people, there's still a lot of people left behind. There's still that skills gap with people looking for work. And expanding registered apprenticeships is certainly a way to help address that and to get not only people into good jobs, but also to make sure that employers have people with the skills they need. And Ms. Carlson, I'm so glad you're here, also from the Pacific Northwest. I know you have offices in Oregon, work with Technology Association of Oregon. I've been especially interested in expanding registered apprenticeship and that model to new sectors of the economy like healthcare and technology. And I worked with Chair Davis and Representatives Ferguson and Guthrie to introduce it has a really long name, Promoting Apprenticeships Through Regional Training Networks for Employers' Required Skills, but it's easy to remember because it's partners. The Partners Act. So this bipartisan bill will use existing dollars to invest in industry partnerships to help businesses recruit workers, develop training curriculum, and provide, importantly, workers with the tools they need, for example, work attire, transportation, childcare, mentorship. So Ms. Carlson, can you talk about apprentice role as an industry intermediary, and how do you support both large national employers like Microsoft and then also the smaller businesses, and how can those industry partnerships and intermediaries help support employers that are navigating the registered apprenticeship process?
Certainly. Some of the feedback that we did get early on was the thought process behind filing of a standard would become very company-centric to the ethos of the company and less about the skill sets in the jobs, which is why they were all willing to come to the table and collaborate on developing the skill sets that we filed for the occupations that are in the supporting testimony. And the roles very functionally are able to then transcend all sectors. If you are a C# developer, it is not only a C# developer for Microsoft. That transcends every company that's working in that language, no matter what sector they're in. which is how we were able as the intermediary to establish that. And then the companies sign on to one set so that we're not having to recraft every time. It also means that we can keep up to the minute with whatever changes take place in the marketplace. We then work with the companies on the curriculums, and the curriculum changes for each employer based on the needs or the platform that they're on, if they're on Azure versus AWS, for example.
Wonderful. Thank you for your work. And I want to get another question in. We've seen women in the trades across the country. The representation is quite low, but in Oregon, we have a wonderful organization, Oregon Tradeswomen. We have basically more than double the national average of women in the trades. They offer work-based learning programs to organizations aiming to be inclusive of women in the trades. Is it Pavicic, did I say it right? In your testimony, you discuss UA's outreach to traditionally underrepresented populations in the trades, including people of color and women, and that recruitment is only as good as the program that's offered. So can you discuss why the quality and accountability provisions of registered apprenticeships are important to the success and retention of workers? And as you prepare to answer, I just want to thank Ms. Carlson for including the success stories in there. There's a lot of diversity in the work you do as well. Mr. Pavicic.
Well, I mean, our outreach, recruitment and outreach is a female, is a woman. We do partner with the North American Building Trades for Women Build Nations, which is actually the building trades' second largest conference every year. And this year it will be held in Minnesota if anybody's interested. And all are welcome. But, I mean, can we do a better job? Obviously we can. The one problem that we do see is that we don't have women apply to our programs because it's not traditional.
Right.
It's not a traditional job. But one of the things that we do is there are plenty of jobs within our trades that women can do. So what we do is do outreach to try to show them that so that they can see that that is a viable option to them. And the other part of it too is with registered apprenticeship, 29 CFR 30 is definitely going to push more of the registered apprenticeships towards making sure that their demographics, match the demographics of the area they're in.
Right. Terrific. And just in my final few seconds, I want to point out that a lot of the current technical education classes that are offered in high schools, I think, will help expose students to the possibilities. There was a high school in my district that for a time had a girls-only welding class. So there's just a lot of opportunities for young women to see the potential there. So thank you all, and I yield back.
Thank you. Mr. Smucker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We've talked about the stigma associated with the trades and other jobs that we've promoted or that have been prevalent. My colleague, Mr. Grothman, will like a quote I ran across recently. This was by Robert Greenleaf, who wrote the book The Servant as Leader, talking about the best leaders are servants first. He was a philosopher, academic, theologian, writer, businessman, but he died in 1990, and on his tomb are inscribed the words that he requested, which says, "Potentially a good plumber ruined by a sophisticated education." So I thought Mr. Grothman would like that. But isn't there some truth to that? And I think we are seeing the tide turn. And of course, we would never discourage a four-year degree for anyone, but there are lots of opportunities out there. And so I'm thrilled that we're talking about apprenticeships. Fact of the matter is, it's still a very small segment of the potential workforce participating in apprenticeships. And so I think a discussion about how we can expand that is very, very appropriate at this time, particularly at a time when we have so many job openings and such a critical need for businesses to fill those jobs. I want to just go back a little, because the fact of the matter is that there are a lot of employers today, to the point I just made, who hire people into their workforce and train them. They may not have an education. I joked just a little bit ago, someone earlier said about the criteria for hiring someone now. I was in the construction industry, a point in time where if you fog a mirror, essentially, you're going to get a job when you walk into the workforce, and that's too often what happens today. But so companies are hiring people and training them without participating in an apprenticeship program, and I think it's worth talking about the the value of an apprenticeship program in the first place. Mr. Hayes, why would a company want to participate want their employees to participate in an apprenticeship program, and why would an employee not only want to participate in on-the-job training, but why would they want to be part of an apprenticeship program?
Well, I believe it's critical that companies have to look at, because just as you mentioned, Congressman, the fact that there are labor shortages all over the country, and if a lot of cases your business's survival is going to depend on not only recruiting but keeping a workforce. Apprenticeship can be a tremendous retention tool for those employees, showing that, you know, we see workers today, and they say, well, what am I going to be making 6 months from now, a year from now? And a lot of employers can't tell them. With an apprenticeship, if that's laid out and say you meet these competencies in 6 months, you're going to be here. In a year, you're going to be here.
Yeah, so isn't it the fact that it's a structured training program, number one, and then two, there is some sort of certificate or journeyman, there's something at the end of that process which I think is really, really valuable to parents, to employees, to students who are considering various career paths, to guidance counselors. That's why I really like what you're doing, and the partnerships with community colleges, for instance. I have great partnerships in my area. Hack is a community college in my area who partners. Students can then, and employees can earn certificates, and then even can go on further and earn an associate degree and go as far as they'd like in that regard. And I think that's a really important aspect of it. We have to figure out how we can expand this. And I know the current registration program can be too cumbersome. Mr. Hayes, can you tell me how long it takes?
I would give you an example of the one in my statement with RMS Aerospace. It took 11 months from beginning to finally the program being recognized.
That's just too long. Too many businesses choose not to participate in apprenticeship programs because of that. I completely agree we need high-quality programs, but we have to look at either streamlining the process or finding other ways to help them. Mr. Pavesic, in your testimony, you say, I just want to clarify your thinking on this, a successful, and I quote, apprenticeship program is built on a partnership between organized labor, signatory employees, and government. Do you think apprenticeship should be expanded beyond that we're seeing in organized labor?
As far as beyond registered apprenticeships?
No, beyond organized labor.
Oh, absolutely.
So are you willing, as a member of organized labor, to share best practices with companies that are not union?
Well, part of our training programs are ERISA funded, so the Department of Labor actually restricts us from those programs that are developed using membership money to share that with non-members. But we're willing to share our model with our non-union counterparts. We embrace registered apprenticeships, and we're more than willing to level the playing field and say that if we're going to do this apprenticeship program and we're going to follow these regulations and you follow the same, we're willing to do that. Absolutely, Congressman.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And we'll now talk to our Chair of the Education and Labor Committee, Mr. Scott.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Registered apprenticeships have stood the test of time, and there's no place where they make the better point than in my district with the apprentice school at the Nupanu Shipbuilding. That apprentice school is over 100 years old. It has graduated more than 10,000 apprentices. It currently has approximately 800 young men and women enrolled in 28 different 4-, 5-, and 8-year apprenticeship programs, all approved by the Virginia State Apprenticeship Agency. And they do such a good job and have so many applications that the odds of getting into the apprentice school are worse than the odds of getting into an Ivy League college. I guess the good advantage of this, you not only get a good education, but it's you're paid while you're doing it, so you end up unlike many students, you end up with no debt. Mr. Hayes, in the community college, you indicate there are a lot of jobs. I assume they're not filled because people can't find workers with the appropriate skills. Is that right?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
And you talked about working with businesses to make sure that you have the programs that are needed. do you have have you been able to meet the need of the businesses in your community?
No, sir, the need is so massive that we cannot turn out the number of people that we need, either whatever traditional college programs, apprenticeships, or whatever. There's still this massive labor shortage in the Dallas-Fort Worth area.
And what is the barrier to meeting the need by the community colleges?
I think the biggest barrier is the fact that, as I said earlier, they're not buying what we're selling. The traditional approach is not working. How do we attract students? How do we get them into, whether it's traditional college programs, whether it's apprenticeship programs, any kind of training education programs? How do we get them into that? How do we attract them? And I think we're still trying to figure that out around the country. There are pockets of success here and there, but to take that to scale is a huge problem.
There are alternatives to community colleges. Can you compare what you charge students for similar programs compared to what they pay elsewhere?
And speaking specifically for the Dallas County Community College District, our tuition rate is $59 a credit hour. Half of our students pay nothing. With the Dallas County Promise, we've had 16,000 seniors that have come into our college programs this past year. That's more than the number of graduating seniors in 17 states. These students will pay nothing for their college, and then with transfer programs worked out to four-year institutions, they could essentially go through get a four-year college degree if they so choose, and not have to pay very much money at all to do that.
Well, what are the alternative ways of getting a similar education, similar job training?
Well, the apprenticeship programs, of course, are areas that we look at simply because we know that, the old saying that not everyone's cut out for college, well, that may be true, but my thing is everyone has to have some kind of post-secondary training.
Right, and you can get it, there are other ways of getting the education of for-profit college, for example?
Yes, sir, that is an alternative. They've had their well-publicized problems around the country, but that certainly could be an alternative.
Well, how do your prices compare to those?
Oh, and I mean, Congressman, a student can get an Associate of Applied Science degree at one of our institutions for less than $4,000. We don't even charge fees. We don't even charge student fees. So we're blessed, very blessed among a lot of community colleges in this country.
Well, if they're buying that at a higher price, do you advertise?
We do have some marketing, for example, with major sporting events, with social media and that sort of thing, but television time is a different story in Dallas. It's a very expensive television market, so you're not going to go out and buy a lot of TV advertising, for example.
I have a couple other questions, Madam Chair, but I see by the time I ask the question, my time would have run out, so I'll yield back.
Thank you. Mr. Banks, you're next.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to focus a little bit, too, on flexibility and innovation. Everyone on this committee knows that the skills gap is a daunting challenge. While registered apprenticeships are an important part of closing the gap, the data makes clear that we will need more options if employers are going to fill the millions of jobs currently available. For example, in my home state of Indiana, there are 100,000 plus unfilled jobs. At the same time, in 2018, there were 17,000 Hoosiers enrolled in federally registered apprenticeships and 3,000 graduates. That's simply not enough. The same is true at the federal level. The latest data shows a 7.6 million unfilled jobs compared to 585,000 active apprenticeships and 72,000 graduates. Given that half of all job openings between now and 2022 will be middle skill, exactly the kind of jobs that apprenticeships can help fill, we clearly will need more options outside of the federally registered programs. Mr. Hayes, in your testimony, you talk about the DCCCD, about what they are already involved with some of these industry-recognized apprenticeship programs. Given the magnitude of the skills gap and the numbers that I've mentioned, would it be fair to say that more industry-recognized apprenticeships are simply an economic necessity?
Well, I believe so, and I think to expand this program, it's going to be critical. But I share some of my colleagues' concerns here about the rigor of those programs, and part of what we need to make sure of is that there's clear guidance on those programs from the Department of Labor, and that rigor is maintained. And a lot of that, employers, though, are going to say that we're going to maintain the rigor simply because they're going to be our workers, and we don't want workers who aren't skilled doing critical jobs. So I think you'll see a lot of that correct itself. I don't know if IRAPs are going to replace the entire world of apprenticeships. I certainly don't think so. I think there's a place for both programs, for both registered and IRAP programs.
Appreciate that very much. That's all I got. I yield back.
Thank you. Ms. Adams.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I want to thank the ranking member as well for convening the hearing today, and to the witnesses, thank you for your testimony. Ms. Carlson, what types of support do intermediaries provide to help lower barriers for employers to participate in registered apprenticeships?
Well, we work with the employers to identify the roles that they're willing to take people that can't or that don't have college degrees, because that's not a requirement for getting into the program, which opens the door to everybody, effectively, 18 and over. And then we provide the employers with a bank of potential of apprentices that they get to interview on a blind basis. So they don't get to know the educational attainment or prior work experience of those people. So they're comparing them purely on soft skills and their ability to have competency in the work. Our ability to do that as the intermediary allows us to kind of break down some of the barriers they've had in hiring previously.
All right, thank you very much. I was glad to see that you recommended in your testimony dedicating $250 million annually to supporting apprenticeship programs. One of the biggest challenges to scaling successful workforce training programs in our country is the lack of resources that we dedicate to the workforce system. WIOA, for example, has yet to be fully funded to authorized levels, and the Trump administration's proposed 2020 budget calls for cutting $1.2 billion for nearly 10% of the Department of Labor's resources to help offset the cost of tax cuts for the wealthiest Americans. I was also impressed by the fact that the apprentices make a roughly 155% jump in earnings in about 18 months of their program. Can you speak more to the positions and the wages that are coming out of your program, your apprenticeship programs, and the kinds of investments that are really necessary to scale programs like yours?
Absolutely. These are middle skills positions, so they're at the low end, the data center technician role, all the way up to cloud specialist and software developer. So they're true middle skills, and the range in retained salary is between $56,000 and $118,000. And we now have a large number that are in that $90,000 to $118,000 coming in. 52% of the apprentices end up having a college degree. Once we get them into the system, we find that out. But the retention looks the same on college degreed versus non-college degreed, proving that it is about competency and not the pedigree.
Yeah, okay. So what other actions can my colleagues and I take to help intermediaries like Apprenda expand innovative programs, apprenticeship programs in high-demand fields while maintaining program quality?
Well, because this is new to the tech sector in this country, one of the challenges that companies look at as they're trying to get their heads around hiring non-traditional talent into these roles is the cost. And they're already fronting the cost at about $75,000 a person for the salary and benefits for the term of apprenticeship. They're fronting a portion of the training costs, and we're working jurisdictionally across each state to identify public-private partnership to pay the remainder of the tuition so that the apprentice pays none of the training cost. As a result, it means having to piecemeal that location by location, which makes it harder to scale with companies. Establishing that $250 million ask would allow for that immediate match on a national scale and would alleviate some of the pressure that we have in trying to help companies understand what their investment might look like and get them more confident and comfortable in the model.
Thank you very much. Madam Chair, I also want to just comment on the fact that a lot of this hearing, and rightfully so, has focused on youth apprenticeships and the benefit of starting students into the workforce. As a former educator of 40 years, I understand how important that is, but also hope that as we debate the importance of apprenticeships, that we can discuss transitioning and displaced adults, returning citizens, and the disabled, as we debate not only preparing future workers for America's workforce, but how to provide for those who are trying to find their way into a changing economy. And with that, Madam Chair, I yield back.
Thank you. Mr. Norcross.
Thank you, Madam Chairman and Ranking Member, for having this hearing. I really like what's coming of this. I am a product of a four-year apprenticeship. Not a common way to get to Congress, but certainly something I understand. And I just want to echo what Ranking Member Schmucker talked about very early on, is the narrative in this nation, in order to make it, you have to go to college. Well, that might be true for few, for many, or at different times in their life, but it's not right for everyone. Certainly, I had three brothers. They went a more traditional college route. I did a 4-year, but it was not in college. It was an electrical apprenticeship program. But the narrative is, from your parents to your teachers to your guidance counselors, you got to go to college. I can't tell you how many college attending people now apply for the apprenticeship program. After they go to college, spend maybe $100,000 of debt, find out it's not for them, and then find their way into one of the skilled craft trades. And that's a narrative that your comments and others that we have to change. You might not go to college in the beginning, maybe at 25 you're ready, but we need to have on-ramps and off-ramps to apprenticeship programs. And I want to thank the chairwoman for setting up that CODAL we went over to Switzerland to see the model that they're making. And they have it in so many more industries than we do. Our traditional apprenticeship craft workers, metal trades, and some of the shipyards are primarily the building trades who've been doing it for well over 100 years and do it better than anybody and do it with zero government dollars. Zero government dollars. And that's the main difference between why I believe we are falling behind in the other areas that you talk about, Ms. Carlson, is that companies want us to pay for it. That's the difference between a model that works in the building trades and the models that you're trying to. I think an idea of seed money to get the programs are going, but this is something that it becomes a gift for those companies, that we should work collectively together, whether in the union, collective bargaining agreement, or other trades that you talk about, Mr. Hayes, what you do, is that we can all do this together. And that's one of the things, the registered program is critical. And there's a couple of reasons why. The standards on the East Coast are the same as the West Coast, particularly in the trades and the metal trades. That electricity flows the same way here as it does there. And they're interchangeable. But the most important thing is you go through these programs, the flexibility for market conditions. When times were tough a half dozen years ago, the apprentice rate of going in was much lower because the industry didn't need it. Now it's on the other end. But unfortunately, when I applied for only 40 spots, there was 800 applications. Today, that's less than half because that narrative that somehow you have to go to college to make it. We were just down with Bobby Scott and his shipyard where we're seeing firsthand that next generation. Because we can draw all the blueprints we want, design the fastest ships, but if there's nobody there to build them, we're in trouble. So that brings me to the registered apprenticeship programs. The portability of skills. If we set up separate standards across the country, that portability gets erased. You can define it for market conditions, which is what they do so well. But so when we talk about registered programs, there are those companies out there that want to abuse apprentices, to use them for the cheaper rate in Davis-Bacon. So you have nothing but first year after first year. So whatever we do, we have to make sure we look at the schools, the graduation rates, that they're just not churning out cheap products at first year, but are actually graduating skilled crafts, women and men. So as I go into my first set of questions, I want to talk about that continuous feedback and the fact that zero government dollars. Mr. Pavsik, or as I call him, Mr. UA, talk to us about the apprenticeship program, because I don't think you figure into the cost of the apprenticeship program what employers are paying apprentices. I mean, they're getting productivity back from when they're paid, right?
Absolutely, Congressman. You know, and the thing about that is that they're getting a skill set from an apprentice that comes in at a lower cost. They're able to blend their rates so they're more competitive with those apprentices that they bring in. But yes, I would say absolutely.
So when we talk about if we really want to do what we've talked about, and I believe everybody here understands, let's create some incentives that aren't necessarily outside of some seed money. Some incentives to use apprentices to work them through on good programs that graduate. So the bidding process comes to mind. Do you have any thoughts on, so if you use a certain amount of apprentices and they graduate at a rate, 60% or above, how does that fit into the bidding process right now?
I'm sorry, Mr. Norcross, your time is up and over, so I'm going to switch, and if we can try and incorporate those answers into some of the other questions, that would be really helpful. Mr. Takano.
Thank you, Chairman Davis, for this hearing, and thank you to our witnesses for providing your insights into this growing industry. Registered apprenticeships are an important part of the workforce training, and they are valuable for the workers and the employers, which is evident from the growing number of apprentices participating. These high-quality programs are critical pathways to ending a cycle of poverty. California is currently a leader in registered apprenticeship programs, with close to 3,000 active programs to date. In San Bernardino County, a neighboring county to my district, they have a successful program called Generation Go. This program serves hundreds of youths ages 16 through 24 by providing work-based learning through a partnership within the K-12 system, community colleges, and industry that creates a pipeline for career success. This is not unique to California. States like South Carolina and Virginia have also very successful registered apprenticeship programs that have trained thousands of apprentices and provided them with credentials that are recognized nationwide. My first question for Ms. Carlson is what I want to ask you is a common complaint about creating new registered apprenticeship programs, especially in new occupations, is the financial burden that employers face. How did the DOL grant that you mentioned in your testimony support the establishment of your program?
Well, it really worked for us kind of like seed money, as Mr. Norcross pointed out. It wasn't intended to be a long-term fund. It was built so that we could adequately staff and work with the companies to build the program. The original intent was that we would help companies set up registered apprenticeship for themselves within each company, and that's when they pushed back on us to staff it and become the intermediary and take on some of those responsibilities on behalf of them with the federal government in the filing process. But those funds were the seed capital that was needed to get the programs running and begin to expand. The contract that we subsequently won from the US DOL to be the IT sector lead is what has funded our ability to expand that on a national footprint. And our program is built to be self-sustaining in 3 to 4 years. So that is not a long-term cost that needs to be there for us, that the sector will start to make that investment in us to maintain it across the country.
So really, you can foresee with this sort of seed capital, the apprenticeship becoming self-sustaining in the way that they are in the building trades.
Correct, over time. So for us, it's a greenfield environment. The companies in this country are trying to get comfortable with the idea and how they cultivate talent. And as much as we're building this out on their behalf, they're figuring out how to operationalize it internally to become a training platform. And so this is something that over time will become self-funding, very similar to the trades.
My next question is for Ms. Gaynor. The average age of a new apprentice in the United States is 29. What can we do to support more youth participation in apprenticeship programs?
Thank you. The average age of the apprentice program in Chicago is younger than that. It's probably the earlier 20s. We've been recruiting people from city colleges, so you have some who are in their late 20s, a few in their early 30s, but we have 5 new people that just started at Aon who are 18 and 19. So they're leaving, some are leaving high school and some are mid-20s. But I think it's what others have said, which is start talking about this in high school. The reason people choose college is because they know it's going to relate to a higher wage. We need to make apprenticeships just as reliable when young people are making a very important choice in their life.
Well, thank you. Ms. Gaynor, can you also elaborate on why this is a financial benefit for a company such as yours, which has been ranked globally as a top company?
Thank you. For us, it is very expensive to hire someone and have them leave after 18 months and then have to go hire, recruit, and train someone else to take their place. So we identified the roles that had higher attrition, and those were the first targets. And that was in order to make the business case and try something new and different, which is inherently risky. So we reduce the cost of retention, we increase our savings by retention, but the second thing is apprentices, especially in the UK where we've been tracking this for over a decade, are much more highly engaged, and that is well proven to be a more productive employee.
Well, how do you suggest we incentivize more employers and businesses to actively participate and come to the table?
I think it's about creating something that is scalable across the country. We are now beginning to start the program in New York, working with IBM and others. And the idea that you can have all the learning and the development we've done of the registered programs can be ported there, I think will be a big help.
Madam Chair, my time's out, and I yield back.
Thank you very much, Mr. Drone.
You have this one going yet? There we go. First of all, thank you very much for coming out today. I think apprenticeships are absolutely a fantastic way to go. Before I got this job, I was an entrepreneur and an employer. My company, I created over 7,000 jobs, so I understand the importance of it's hire, it's train, and it's retain. And the focus is train and retain. If we get those two things right, everybody succeeds. The team members succeed, and the company succeeds. So, Mr. Pavasek, talk a little bit about why UA is so committed to apprenticeship, because it's an expensive type of on-the-job training. There's a lot of less resource-intensive ways you can go about it. But just speak to that a little bit for us.
Well, part of it too is that, it's funded by the membership. So there's a piece of their hourly rate that comes back into training. And the members are about preserving our trade, to make sure that this trade is passed on from generation to generation. So the cost is not, to them, the cost is not a matter. But the other part of it too is we want to make sure that we have the highest skilled workforce to make sure that we have the individuals that can come in and do the job.
Thinking about entry, how do people get ready for apprenticeship programs? What's your thoughts on legislation on pre-apprenticeship programs that might help these young people be ready, actually, to move into an apprenticeship?
Well, you talked about retain, and we support pre-apprenticeships. The one problem, probably the one issue that we have when it comes to retention, and it's usually in the first year is where we lose them, is that an individual comes to us and they're in there 6 months and all of a sudden they're like, you know what, this job's not for me. I don't want to work high. I don't want to be dirty. I want to do something else. And we lose those individuals. And we have an investment into that individual. So someone who has a pre-apprenticeship, we also have accelerated training programs ahead of those, 16, 18 weeks accelerated training programs and boot camps. But that individual at least sees, hey, you know what? I have an interest in being a plumber. I have an interest in being a pipe fitter or a welder. So our retention rates are much better with pre-apprenticeship.
Okay, excellent. The last quick question was, speak to the value to an apprentice in having a registered apprenticeship program with a nationally recognized credential that's stackable. How does this position them for more success?
Well, first of all, it's portable. So an apprentice that's trained in New York can go to Chicago, can go to California, and those skills are taught. We're not just teaching them how to be a plumber or pipe fitter in New York. We're teaching them how to be a successful plumber or pipe fitter throughout the country. The other part of it too is wages. I mean, it's a living wage. They are able to raise a family and own a couple of cars and buy a home. And the other part of it too is no debt. I mean, they're going to come through. They're going to earn while they learn with 100% employment, and no debt at all.
Okay, thank you. Yield back my time.
Thank you very much. And we're at Mr. Saban.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Before I start, I'd like to seek unanimous consent to insert into the record a statement from the International Union of Painters and Allied Trades. Thank you. I don't go home every weekend. I can't. It's just too far away. But when we do have a 1-week break, I go home. I try to, and I usually do, visit schools, have conversations with students. And I am one of those who tell students that not all of them are going to be doctors and engineers, and that some of them are going to have to make hamburgers. I love eating hamburgers. And I tell them that there's life beyond, aside from college. Because I do agree, and I am aware that students are being told that, yeah, you do good in school and go to college. I wish I could say that we have a robust apprenticeship program. We have a trade school that's not accredited. I was able to get them some money, hoping that they'd get an accreditation, be nationally recognized portal. But so now that school is sort of teaming up with our high school and our community college, so that students will get to learn the trades. I tell them about a friend of mine whose only training in life was at the Trade Institute, and has come back, built himself a business, and pays himself, makes more money than most lawyers on the island. So we're going to get there. I continue to support that program. Let me ask you, Ms. Carlson, if I may. Your testimony calls for creating a sustainable annual $250 million federal matching fund that states, and I hope that the insular areas, territories, like the Northern Marianas, could access to support the classroom training costs of developing apprentices in non-traditional sectors. If this investment were made, how many additional apprenticeships do you foresee could be established annually?
I would see that as, doing quick math here, around 30,000. That would subsidize the classroom training of about 30,000 apprentices. Thank you.
Ms. Gaynor, this committee in the last Congress, we made a visit to a training, an apprentice shop training center, not far, just within driving range of Capitol Hill. And I was impressed, Mr. Pasovich, because this is a shop that has union working with employers and supporting these people. These individuals come in, attend class for a week, 1 day, and the rest of the week they go and work full-time. But Ms. Gaynor, you may not know this, but in my district in the Northern Marianas, along with American Samoa, we're the only 2 U.S. jurisdictions for the 4-year public university. Each hosts a single community college. Now, how have your organization worked with your local community college and workforce board to support and scale your apprenticeship program?
Our apprenticeship program partners for all of our training with our local community college. So they work 4 days a week at Aon, and then they go to community college. So there's a technical college, there's IT college, there's a business college. So it's a complete partnership with city colleges, community colleges.
Right. And I thought I heard you said that you also have programs in Europe.
So the company is global, and apprenticeship programs in insurance and financial services are pretty common in Europe, especially, the center of the industry is in London. And it's pretty common for people to have gone through an apprentice program.
Because Aon is in my district, actually. It's in many parts of the Pacific Islands. So maybe if you could look into that and find a way. Because many of the students are, even if in cooperative education, co-ops, as what the high school students, they are sent to work in white-collar desk jobs. They're not sent to learn insurance, for example, or they're not sent to work with construction companies for some reason. That really does a disservice to the individual students who may actually turn out to be great auto mechanics. But I see my time is up, Madam Chair. I'll submit some questions for the record. Thank you very much for being here today.
Thank you very much, and thank you to all of you. As we wind up, I wanted to just ask one particular question that didn't quite get asked, although I know, Ms. Carlson, it was in your written statement, and I think it was referred to as, what are apprenticeships? How do we define them? How are they branded? Do we run the risk sometimes of just, talking about apprenticeships without having the specifics involved? And so I wonder, Ms. Carlson, if you could respond quickly, and if others want to add something to that, that would be fine. And you can also submit that for the record if you'd like, so that we have that as part of our record for today as well. Ms. Carlson, since you were the one who recommended particularly defining this.
Yes, I think we have regulation through DOL already on books, but having it established in a more formal setting would be, I think, incredibly important for us as we try to alleviate brand confusion around just terming an intern as an apprentice and changing the title to call it a training program. So I think codifying that into law and securing that would also go a long way towards making sure that we deliver on the promise and any funding that the DOL is providing in the marketplace.
Thank you. Would you generally agree with that? I could suggest there's kind of a consensus.
Well, I just had another comment as far as that went, Madam Chairwoman. But one of the comments that I had heard earlier today was that the manufacturers and their training programs and and a lot of manufacturers bring individuals in and train them. I think where the mistake is to call that an apprenticeship program. There's nothing wrong with calling that a training program, but I would hate to see apprenticeship programs watered down because we bring somebody into a tool and die manufacturer or whatever that is, and then teach them maybe one or two skills there over a short period of time. I think the idea is to make sure that individuals have the skills to be productive for their entire life and their entire careers. Thank you.
I think it's useful to think of an apprenticeship as a defined period of time where you graduate and you have a specific job that is recognized across the country, not just in your own company, and so that is scalable nationally. But it is not something, I think the biggest fear for us is we invest all of our own funds into this program and it becomes like an internship where maybe you're getting coffee or maybe you're writing code and no one knows what it means, and thus it does not have value.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. And certainly from our point of view too, in terms of the federal role, we're talking about taxpayer dollars. And so in those instances where that does help people to navigate better, to be a little more educated in the process, that's helpful as well. I want to turn to our distinguished ranking member for his closing statement.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to thank all of the witnesses for their testimony here today. It was an excellent conversation, and I appreciate you scheduling this, Madam Chair. As we heard, apprenticeships and on-the-job learning are valuable tools for providing Americans in the 21st century with the skills they need to compete and succeed in today's rapidly evolving economy. Registered apprenticeships are certainly a valuable aspect of this effort, but we know it is not alone filling the gap that we have today in our workplace. We just simply can't limit students to just one tool in the toolbox. We need to think about expanding the registered apprenticeship program or including an all-of-the-above approach to ensure that we're able to fill these jobs and provide these lifelong jobs to the students. Employers know better than anyone what skills they're looking for. We should ensure that they have the flexibility to empower prospective employees, whether through registered programs, the expansion of those programs, or through other means. There's not one pathway to success. I was, however, very encouraged to hear each of our witnesses, how they've worked in their communities to contribute to a dynamic workforce, how they've worked with employers to meet their needs and uphold the dignity of all work. We must continue down this path if we want to continue to succeed and meet the demand for workers. Thank you again, and I yield back.
Thank you. And I just wanted to remind my colleagues that pursuant to committee practice, materials for submission for the hearing record must be submitted to the committee clerk within 14 days following the last day of the hearing. And also for the witnesses, if you are, we'll get those questions to you. I think they have to be in within 7 days, and you have 14 days to respond to those as well. So I hope that you will take that opportunity if it is relevant for your comments. And I really just wanted to thank you all for being here today. I think you provided a broad range of comments, much consensus here today, and I think urgency. And that's really what we need to have, and to be able to bring to the men and women of this country, young people as well as a wider range of ages, that there are those programs available to them that give them that career path that is sustaining for them and for their families, strengthening businesses with a valuable pool of productive and committed workers. So we recognize the importance of that. I know that we hope to have additional hearings, but we also know that we need to distinguish to a certain extent how we can proceed and how we can move forward. And so your comments have been very helpful in that. And I thank you this evening. Thank you for being here. And we are now adjourned.